John chapter 6. I'm going to read on this morning from the New King James translation. I'll read. You can follow along with me. I'm going to read all the way down through verse 67. And it reads, Then Jesus said to them, Most assuredly I say to you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of the Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will raise him up at the last day. For my flesh is food indeed, and my blood is drink indeed. He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood abides in me, and I in him. As the living Father sent me, I live because of the Father, so he who feeds on me will live because of me. This is the bread which came down from heaven, not as your fathers ate the manna and are dead. He who eats this bread will live forever. These things he said in the synagogue as he taught in Capernaum. Therefore many of his disciples, when they heard this, said, This is a hard saying. Who can understand it? When Jesus knew in himself that his disciples complained about this, he said to them, Does this offend you? What then if you should see the Son of Man ascend where he was before? It's the Spirit who gives life, and the flesh profits nothing. The words I speak to you are spirit, and they are life. But there are some of you who do not believe. For Jesus knew from the beginning who they were who did not believe and who would betray him. And he said, Therefore, I've said to you that no one can come to me unless it has been granted to him by the Father. From that time, many of his disciples went back and walked with him no more. Then Jesus said to the 12, Do you also want to go away? You may be seated. So last week we continued our lifestyle series. Everybody say lifestyle. Say it with a little more power. Say lifestyle. Your lifestyle is the way by which you live. Your lifestyle is influenced by your values, by the things that kind of guide your life. And so last week, in this lifestyle series, we went through the message called Compromising Concessions. And I defined the word concede as to surrender or yield something that you once possessed. It's to accept something as true, valid, or accurate. And so from our text in Romans 12, I gave you a few keys on how to avoid making some compromising concessions that can have a negative effect on your lifestyle. And the first thing that we talked about last week from our text is you have to go through daily sacrifices, which means you've got to make sure that you make a decision that you're going to die to you. There's no such thing as a sacrifice that doesn't hurt. The mere word sacrifice, there was no sacrifice without the shedding of blood. So there is no sacrifice that feels good. That's why the Bible tells us that we offer up the sacrifice of praise. What is it? Why sacrifice? Because I don't feel like doing it. You know, sometimes the sacrifice of serving. Sometimes the sacrifice of you getting up out of your bed. Sometimes the sacrifice of going to work. Y'all don't want to talk to me on this morning. It's a sacrifice. It means it hurts sometimes. You know, some of y'all have to have the sacrifice called an apology. Because you don't want to apologize. And an apology hurts because you was wrong and you did somebody wrong. You know, so you had to give up the sacrifice of an apology. You know how it is when your kids did something wrong to their sibling. It's like, apologize. Say I'm sorry. Sorry. And you're like, no. That wasn't even real. That was obligatory and that was fake. Look him in the eye and say, I'm sorry. Sorry. You know, and you look at your child like, that wasn't even authentic. But you're like, you know what? Get out of my face. Get out of here with that. You know, because you know you didn't mean it. But with everything within you, you had to at least try to make it right because you didn't want to get the right hand of correction again. So the first thing that we said that you had to make daily sacrifice. In Romans 12, it says that you've got to present yourself a living sacrifice, which means you got to make a daily sacrifice to live for God. Living for God is something that is a decision that has to be made daily. Every day that I wake up, I got to make a decision to die to me and live for him. Every single day, all day, every day, I've got to make decisions. I've got to decide which me is going to be present today. Is it going to be the carnal me or is it going to be the godly me? Because if I'm not intentional about the godly me showing up, the carnal me will just pop up. The carnal me like, what we doing today? Who we need to cuss out today? Who need to catch these hands today? We ready. Listen, we stay ready. We ain't got to get ready. We stay ready. You know, and you be like, sit down, carnal you. You're trying to get me fired today. Ain't nobody got time for you. Zip it. Zip it. And the carnal you like, just let me at him. Listen, put that phone down. Let me talk to them. Talking about they can't show up. They sick. They ain't sick. Sick in the head. They story on Instagram said they wasn't sick. Daily sacrifices. Second thing that I said last week in my text is that you have to decide not to conform. It says, do not conform to this world, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So you got to make a decision not to conform. You got to make a decision. The Greek word means to conform oneself as far as your mind and character, or to fashion yourself according to something external. And unfortunately, not just the world, but the people of God now want to be like the world versus being like God. You know, we were created in the imago Dei, in the image of God, but we're so busy trying to be the image of the world. You know, we're so busy trying to fit in, look like, sound like, act like. You know, even in our music, Walter, there's no difference between the Christian rap artist and the secular rap artist, because the beat's the same, but the only difference is the secular artist may say Jesus. The Christian artists now don't even say Jesus no more because they don't want to say Jesus because then they might not sell nothing. You know, so sometimes I hear a beat and I have to wait, poor shit. I got to wait and hear what they're talking about before I start moving. Because I'm like, I need permission to move because this beat's tight. You know, so I'm trying to wait. Okay. All right, he said Jesus. All right, we good. You know, but then he said something else. I'm like, well, wait a minute. You know, what am I listening to? Because I'm a music guy. You know, every morning when I work out, myself and Megan and Dante, I got to have music. I got to have some music going. You know, sometimes I'll be like, what's that? And Megan's like, it's the playlist. It ain't my fault. I got it from Ari. It was Christian stuff, Ari. It was Christian stuff. Most of it. We be jamming, I'll be like, and then my spirit change, because I'm like, oh, and I was like, who is this? And Megan like, I don't even know. Are they new? Must be. I'm like, I think I like this. Is this a Christian artist? We don't know. They ain't cussing. Let the party keep on rolling. Because they ain't saying nothing to get it. Everything. Everything is auto-tuned anyway, so it don't really matter what they're saying. So we got to make a decision not to conform. We got to make a decision, so who is your role model? Is it Jesus or Kanye? Who you trying to be like? Who you looking up to? Who's your idol? Listen, are you still trying to be a Kardashian on the low? You still keeping up with them? You got to decide not to conform. We're supposed to be the ones that people are trying to pattern their lives after, but we're too busy trying to pattern our lives after those that are in the world. So we got to decide not to conform. And the last point that I gave you on last week was you've got to have a determination to live for God, which means that you're not going to live for God accidentally, like I said in my first point. You got to make a decision to live for God. You got to make sure that you're pursuing God with all that's in you, because if you're not, by default, you're going to be pursuing the devil. Right. Listen, gravity sets in. So if you're not pushing forward, then you're automatically going to fall backwards. If you're not fighting to go up, then by default, you're going to come down. So therefore, you've got to understand what it means to happen. On this morning, on some Sunday mornings, you guys will see it. If you're driving here, from the Kyle area, you see hot air balloons. That's a pretty normal occurrence around here. So I saw one this morning. And the only way, normally I see them on the way up. This morning I saw it on the way down. So in order for it to go up, it has to have the flame real bright and real hot in order for it to push it up. But in order for it to come down, they got to turn it down. So as long as it's turned up, it's going to go up. But anytime it's turned down, it's going to go down. So anytime you're not focused on trying to go up, understand you're going to go down by default. See, some of you don't understand. That's the reason why your life is so up and down, because you're up and down. Listen, either you're going to pursue God with all your heart or you're not. So you got to decide to live for God.